Welcome to Absolutely Marvel and DC. What is that, you're asking? Well, Comicstorian fans, I started up a side project with 3 of my buddies where we sit down and discuss superhero movies, TV shows, and just stuff going on in the entertainment industry. We basically made a movie TV show review channel that focuses on superhero stuff, but we do other shows, such as Dan and I are going to be talking about Squid Game very soon, and we're going to be talking about some classic horror movies for the month of October. We've decided to do this review right here on the Comicstorian channel to let you know that our new channel exists and has been up and running for almost 6 months. I didn't want to tell you guys about it sooner because, well, you know, what if we stopped doing it 2 weeks in? And today's episode is brought to you by G Fuel. You see, G Fuel has come out with a new flavor, Carnage and Venom, which I felt would be the perfect sponsor for a Venom movie review. Why did I say Venom that way? Who knows? Today we're going to have a quick taste test of them, though. So the Venom flavor, which is called Black Ooze. I was going to call it Black Sludge, but I don't think G Fuel wants me to call it that. So here's Black Ooze. Wow, that is like really, actually really good. It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's berry kind of flavored, like a berryish kind of flavor. I'm not going to chug this can as it's 300 milligrams of caffeine, and I do have to taste test the other one now. But, so the Carnage is on my floor. Okay, so they're both they're either very similar, they must be slightly different. Yeah, okay, this is more cherry. This is cherry, this is blue. Like, I'm going with like a bluish flavor. You know what I mean if you drink a lot of like artificial flavorings. So red ooze and black ooze are the 2 flavors. So Carnage is on my floor too, I'm gonna have to clean that up, but if I have to pick one, I'm going with the cherry-based drink, red ooze. And don't forget, G Fuel is today's sponsor. They came out with these great new flavors. I've been talking about them on Comics Experiment. And once again, if you do enjoy this, please consider going over to Absolutely Marvel and DC, our new channel where we discuss various things. Now, joining me today are Dylan and Sal, 2 of the co-hosts over on the new channel. And we got like a mixed bag here. You see, I loved Venom. I am probably going to see it 2, 3, 4 more times. Dylan's meh about Venom.
It's true.
And right now, Sal's debating if 1990s Fantastic Four was better or not.
I think we could all agree that Roger Corman's Fantastic Four is, at least production-wise, not as good as Venom Let There Be Carnage.
That's fair.
So, obviously, we're going to talk spoilers, assuming you've already seen the movie, you're watching our review on it. But as a quick rundown, as we do in Absolutely Marvel DC, let me remind you of what happened in the movie. We pick up where we kind of last left off. Venom and Eddie are working together, but the brotherly relationship that they have is kind of getting tenuous. They're arguing about how they should be handling various things. This is like 30 to 45 minutes of the movie until eventually Venom and Eddie separate. And Venom, to get back at Eddie, ruins his Ducati motorcycle, which made me cry just a little inside watching Venom just be like, smash, smash, smash. During this time, Carnage has awakened inside of Cletus Cassidy as he bit Tom Hardy's hand to get a piece of Venom, which was an interesting decision. But that happens, and Carnage gets free and pretty much reenacts Maximum Carnage without Spider-Man. Runs around grabbing Shriek, destroying various things, killing all kinds of people randomly. They decide that they're going to have a wedding. Everybody's going to bring a guest. Carnage is going to bring Venom. Cletus is going to bring Eddie, and Shriek is going to get our cop, Peter Mulligan. And they're all going to be brought to the wedding where we have the big final showdown, which had some ups and downs. Because you thought it was going to go one way, went a totally different way, and it ends with Cletus getting his head bit off and Carnage being eaten by Venom. And then the most amazing post-credit scene ever, which we had a full discussion of, and we'll discuss a little bit of it here, but we did have a full discussion of it over at Absolutely Marvel and DC, and that link is down below as well. But that is the movie. Quick rundown. Let's start with the most negative of our thoughts today, most likely. Sal, go for it.
Yeah, so Venom Let There Be Carnage is, obviously a true sequel to the original Venom. It ups the ante while dialing down the story. There's less plot in this one than there is in the last one, but I think that they know that was kind of like that's the gist of this movie, right? Like, this movie is supposed to be kind of more obvious and direct. It's supposed to be more about like seeing the confrontation. The confrontation is like the meat and potatoes of this movie, right? Like everyone's there to see Venom fight Carnage.
Right.
And you get that. So at the end of the day, I think that Venom Let There Be Carnage delivers on its basic premise. Not only do they let there be carnage, but also Carnage says let there be carnage.
Yeah, they say the line.
Say it, and he says it for no reason with no provocation, which is fantastic. That's always a great invocation of the line.
It's kind of a good way to describe this entire movie, is that it just happens with no reason.
yeah, it just happens. A lot of things just happen with no reason. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Let's talk about the Venom Carnage fight. I actually really enjoyed the actual fight itself, because my biggest complaint with the first Venom movie is once Venom fought Riot, it just turned into CGI
Goop.
splash fighting. Like,
yeah.
blah, blah. This one actually showed them fighting back and forth, using weaponry, punching each other, using the blades. I was worried before going into this movie that it was just going to turn into CGI splash fight. Woo! With Cletus and Eddie appearing going, oh!
Yeah, or the worst of it being like they fight, then they cut, and then we have Woody Harrelson and Tom Hardy fight themselves.
Right. Yeah.
Or worse yet, you separate all of them, so like they have a symbiote fight and a human fight, like which I feel like was someone's first idea at the production level of this movie.
Oh, but they get separated for a brief period. But at least it makes sense.
Very
it makes
briefly.
sense why it happened.
And a forgivable minute. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, here we go. And then they just get right back to it. I'm like, right, this movie cost $200 million. Like, they're going to have just a big CG fight. And it's amazing, actually, how trim this movie is. Like, this movie is just the plot. Like, the plot of the movie is Venom and Carnage have to fight at the end. And then they do.
Yeah. I actually, one thing I really liked about this movie was how fast it actually was, because they didn't throw a lot of filler or pointless content in there, to the point of I actually wish we got more of how Eddie was related to Cletus. Like they told us what happened and they implied it, but I don't know what really happened. You know, because he's like, oh, you didn't tell my story properly. We didn't even see the story. We didn't see the world's reaction or what Eddie did. Just, oh, the story came out and Cletus disliked it.
Yeah.
Well, I would have liked a little bit more of that.
There's a lot of that in this movie where, like, things just kind of happen. I believe they're called leaps in logic. And in this particular case, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of just, like, you say there's not a lot of filler. I think you're right, but I don't think that the scenes we get can qualify as anything other than filler, because at the end of the day, they just want to see Venom and Carnage fight. The whole movie is just
it's kind of filler.
It's just wheel spinning to get to the fight. And usually, like, a movie has like character development and structure so that, like, we can build to the fight and earn it, but instead we just have the fight. And that could have been like a 10-minute YouTube video. It would have probably made as much money. You know, they just throw on ads, right? Like, just front load the ads with the beginning of the ad, maybe a mid-roll in the middle, and you make as much money. This movie is technically not very good. Like, the characters in it don't have they have the most basic motivations. Shriek should not have been in it. Like, she doesn't provide any role other than motivation for Cletus Cassidy, which makes Cletus Cassidy a different character than the one that they had on the page, which is
motivation.
Right, and Cletus Cassidy / Carnage is one of the simplest, easiest, most direct characters you can adapt. And it's like, for a studio like Sony and for a producer like Avi Arad, it couldn't be simpler or more beautiful to be able to just go, why does he do the things he does? Because he can. That's what he does. Carnage doesn't care about anything or anybody except for killing people. He kills, like, what? He kills the prison. But, like, that's the maximum carnage we get in this movie.
Well, it's actually funny because in the middle of the movie, and for the record, I actually disagree with you on the story element and that it's filler, and I'll talk about that in a minute, which is actually one reason I really did enjoy this movie, but I want to give Dylan a moment to speak before I go into a whole tirade myself. But I do want to mention, based on that, it's funny because in the middle of the movie, when Carnage and Cletus agree to do stuff, and he grabs the truck and he throws it over, my wife leaned over to me, she's like, why did Carnage do that? And then my response was, that's Carnage. Just like classic
Yeah.
Joker, they
Yes.
just do things. Yeah,
Right.
Like when the Joker movie came out, they give a whole bunch of backstory as to why Joker does what he does, which is a great movie.
Yeah.
But we didn't need it. You didn't need like it was good, but you didn't need it. And that at the beginning is what I enjoyed about Carnage's portrayal, because at the start it was I'm murdering the prison. I'm throwing a car off the bridge. There's no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing.
Well, as long as it results in killing people or carnage,
Right.
like lowercase c, then he's fine with it, right? Like that's the idea. And that's not this character. Like
Right.
he does those things sometimes, but he's not really motivated by that. He's motivated to get Shriek, to be
Yeah.
with her again, and then to marry her. And the symbiote is like begrudgingly helping him, which is another thing where I'm like, man, like you got to give Carnage his personality. Like they're not really separate. Like they are, but
No.
not like Venom and Eddie are.
No. Well, Carnage is in the recent years. He is separate. But Dylan, I'm sorry. I don't want to. Why don't you get a moment to speak?
I was going to say, like, I couldn't remember if Carnage had, like, a separate voice from Cletus. Because I always remembered it's just, like, Cletus is so insane that, like,
Yeah.
it does, like, they're one and the same voice.
Right, like he overwhelmed it or something like that. I think
Right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
for a while, like before the scene in the car where they talk to each other for the first time, I thought that's what they were doing. Is like
Yes.
this is just
who I am
Woody
now.
Harrelson.
Yes.
Like that's it. And I was like, okay, I kind of like that better because it separates Venom and Carnage more, especially
Yeah.
when the entire like point of Venom winning the fight hinges on them being a team and Carnage and Cletus not being a team.
Yes.
It's like if they just if it was one person, there was no teamwork to begin with.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have been a stronger beat.
So for recent time in the comic books, you are right. I think the actual plot is, and don't quote me on this because it's from Maximum Carnage in the early days, but I'm pretty sure Carnage didn't have a separate voice from Eddie, like Venom and Eddie, and I'm pretty sure the reason is that Cletus's personality did overwhelm it. In recent years, that has been retconned so that Carnage is separate, because once Cletus was killed off officially, Carnage kept moving and was like aware of himself, and now they're kind of separate beings because half the time Cletus is just a corpse that Carnage is dragging around.
Exactly.
Because Cletus isn't even alive at this point in the comics.
No.
series.
I guess you could also argue that in those early days, the Carnage symbiote itself had just been born, so it took a while to develop its own kind of
Yeah.
conscience and sentience,
fair.
and that's why it's so similar to Cletus, because it, like we've seen that Venom takes on sort of the personalities of its hosts, being originally on Spider-Man,
Right.
and going off, and that's why I think in Donny Cates' run, that was like they explained that that's why he always wants to kind of be a hero, because
Yeah.
Peter was his original host.
Whatever host they go on to, they take the traits of. That's been explained back in the
Yeah.
Planet of the Symbiotes, which is why you
Yeah.
have problems like Carnage, where if they attach to
Right.
a problematic person, the symbiote becomes a problem.
Right, it amplifies.
Yeah, that was explained back in the Space Knight era when Venom was a Space Knight.
Nice.
And I do believe in the early days, Venom didn't have a voice at all, if you remember, because
No.
at the beginning it was just a suit that Spider-Man had, like it wasn't even a sentient
Yeah, originally
being.
it was just a one-dimensional creature, and then when Venom became a character, Eddie spoke for it, and we would see Eddie react to the thoughts in his head that were the symbiote's consciousness, but it never really talked.
Right.
I remember, like, I think in like the late 90s, they started having like speech bubbles for the suit, which, like, as a purist, I was like, "Fie!" But now I'm like. By the time we get to King in Black, it's like,
Yeah,
of course.
it's an
You
integral part
He's his
of the
own character.
Yeah,
Like, that
right.
suit is a character now. So you
And
need to
I
be able
love
to
that. I
talk.
love that about Venom. It's one of my favorite parts of Venom, because like when Agent Venom, when they lobotomized Venom and then he started
Yeah.
to talk again, it was like an exciting moment watching
Right.
the Agent Venom run.
Yeah, totally. But getting back to Venom versus Carnage here. Oh yeah. So there's where do you want to go with this? Because like.
Well, I want to bring up the story beat for a moment here. So I
yeah,
actually
yeah, please,
really
please.
enjoyed the story, and I felt it was a great follow-up to the first movie, because the first movie's whole plot was Eddie didn't want Venom. Venom came out of nowhere. Venom was a parasite, and now we're looking at, I think they said it's a month or a year later. It's a lot shorter than you would have assumed.
It has to be like only
Something
a
like
couple of
that.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see how that relationship has been growing, and I actually liked the Venom and Eddie kind of like, it was, you almost expected it, you kind of knew it was coming.
Yeah.
But I liked the back and forth with them where it's like Eddie's like, no, I don't really want you. And to go as far as they aren't a lethal protector, he's not feeding Venom properly, it really comes off like, no, Venom is an alien parasite that I just picked up. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And I don't know what to do with it. And I'm begrudgingly working with Venom. And I
Yeah.
liked that because then when we get to the separation, they have to work together to be the lethal protector. Because it changes the story. The original one, Eddie just fell into being a superhero. So the origin is I accidentally fought Riot, basically. Venom had no other option but to use me to fight Riot. While this movie is all about the two of them agreeing to be Venom, the lethal protector, which I loved. I loved that moment when they both said it in unison, lethal protector. And I'm like, so 90s.
Yeah. That blew my mind, by the way. You know, one of your producers was made his bones. The only reason why he's even getting paid is because of work in the 90s. Yet when he complains about being a lethal protector, says it's so 80s. And I'm like, he wasn't a lethal protector until like the early 90s. Why would you say that? How could you get the decade that wrong? And I'm like, right, because Tom Hardy wrote this movie.
I did find that really funny that they just got the decade wrong because I'm like, you weren't even that far off. It's not even like, like you all you that's so 90s. It's all you had to say. Like,
yeah, no, but they didn't know that, and that's what it is. Like they didn't know that. They didn't know that Lethal Protector came out in the 90s, so they just didn't put that in there right. Like, and that's this movie.
But that's what I liked about the story, because as a super Venom fan and really enjoying the first movie, even with the weird retcons that they had to do to get it out of Spider-Man's lore.
Which I totally get. Like, I grant you, like, they wanted it to be its own franchise. You have to make allowances. There's plenty of Venom stuff out there. Like, when they leave at the end of the movie, I was, like, really hoping that he was going to go under San Diego or San Francisco.
No.
And no, they go to like Mexico. I'm like, what?
Where he put his toes in the sand. I loved that. I love that scene. But
really came back around, yeah.
But I feel like this movie works as a part of a Venom trilogy because it takes the origin, which was kind of just, we got thrown together and we had to fight. And now they're a hero. They're working together. We have all the disagreements. We see how they're living, and Venom doesn't like it. And Eddie's like, deal with it. You're having chocolate and chickens, you know?
Yeah.
And they're not fighting villains. They're not being a superhero, but they have to be to fight Cletus. In the moment that Eddie decides that he's going to own up for creating Cletus and causing these issues and giving Cletus Carnage, to me is that moment in the movie where it's like, so the development of Eddie Brock as a character just is between these two movies. We moved it forward. I'm looking at both movies as one big movie, as opposed to, this movie just picks up at a weird spot and just moves forward.
Yeah.
You could cut off the second and third act of the first movie and stitch this movie on top of it, and you'd have one normal length movie that has like a more satisfying arc.
For as much depth and like character as Cletus Cassidy gets / needs, you could open the first Venom movie with Cletus, like set him up as a character.
Yeah.
Because you don't need, he has this girlfriend, he was abused as a child. Like, no one cares or wants to know anything about that. Like, he's a psycho. That's the story.
There was a line in the fight where he's complaining to Eddie that he never covered like the my side of the story. Cletus is saying, it's like, why are you trying to make Cletus Cassidy sympathetic?
Right.
With one line of dialogue.
And that two lines, because then he says, I wish all I wanted was to be your friend. And I'm like anyone cares. Like, and
no one cares.
You didn't set that up. That's the real problem, is like, you didn't set it up. Like, if you want to portray Cletus as like a hypocrite and a jackass who's just like, I'm mysterious and crazy, but literally don't look behind you at my prison cell and all the clues that I deliberately made that you could use to find the thing that would pull the trigger on who I am, on my life. So many things happen to Cletus that are like out of his control, or that he like doesn't agree with, but literally made happen. I was just like, why are you upset? Like, you did that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. No.
It's
I think that's a good sentiment, because it's like a lot of this movie is like, I don't know, to me, like, this is one of the most bizarre movies I've ever seen.
Super bizarre.
And it's hard to put your finger on, because it's like, it's not bad. It's kind of an inoffensive script, and it doesn't, it's like almost there. And I think that's a lot of the problem for it for me, is like, the jokes are almost really funny. Just everything about it is like there's a scene. How are you going to put a scene where Venom comes out of the closet and goes to a gay nightclub in your movie?
I love that.
And then me still be like, this movie isn't my favorite movie of all time.
I loved, because I'm sitting here trying to think of like true filler.
Great.
Even that scene was great, because I loved like why he went there, and then him not misconstruing. He took the message of just be who you are, and like he ran with it. I loved it. Like, leave the protector out. Like, I'm like, oh God.
There's just so much in this. There's so many little, like, probably Andy Serkis moments, like he pushed for moments in this movie where it's like, oh, this is what he wanted this movie to be, where it's like just ridiculous, stupid, like Venom riding off on a motorcycle and then flipping Eddie off with the symbiote with a big hand. Like, stuff like that is just like, that is what this movie should have been the entire time, but it's still made by Sony, and it still has producers and boards attached to it, so it can't quite be like the most ridiculous, stupid thing anyone's ever seen, even though that's what I think it should have been.
You want to see the circus cut.
Yeah, I want to see the circus cut. I want to see. My first thought at the end of this movie was like, man, if James Gunn directed this, it would have been incredible.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's not to discount Andy Serkis. I just feel like he doesn't have the director clout to let it, like, he obviously has clout because he's Andy frickin' Serkis, but
I know.
he hasn't directed it enough for people to A, for him to like find a groove, and B, for him to let studios let him loose, like clearly Warner Brothers did with James Gunn on the Suicide Squad.
Yeah. But they needed to fail in order to make that happen. Like, Sony doesn't perceive that they've made any mistakes yet, so they believe that they're resting on clout. So they're like, no. Listen, Venom made $800 million. Like, we know how to make a Venom movie at this point.
That's what they're doing. They've kind of subtly admitted the Spider-Man situation got botched by canceling the franchise and restarting it. The Venom situation, though, came out at $800 million, and then, they're like, no, we know what people want for Venom. They want to see a big CGI battle at the ending of two symbiotes just going blah blah blah.
Well, and they want to see Tom Hardy act with himself. Like, they want to see Tom Hardy be silly and goofy and be a cartoon character, and
totally
like do that for 2/3 of the movie. And then, as long as he fights a big CGI character at the end, it doesn't matter. And that's the problem here, is that, like, Carnage is like Carnage makes sense, right? If you're gonna make a Venom sequel, obviously you're gonna put Carnage in there. Like, I'm actually kind of surprised at the restraint of using a totally throwaway villain like Riot for the first movie. But but then they made Carnage into a throwaway villain in this movie because he has this gravitas of, if you're seeing a Venom movie, you probably know who Carnage is, plus the, like, ham-handed effort to depict Cletus Cassidy as this PG-13 serial killer, and yet still kill him at the end and destroy the symbiote so you can never do more Carnage. And it's like, I'm not suggesting that, like, there's legs to the Carnage character. There's two stories, his origin and Maximum, and then, like, that's kind of it.
Yeah, Extreme wasn't the greatest, and King in Black isn't him. So,
or Minimum, or USA, or Absolute. Like, Absolute was, like, the biggest thing he could do, and even then he was a corpse. But, like, but even still, they went, at the end of the day, he's just an excuse to watch Venom fight another symbiote. And it's like, well, then you could have used Phage or Lasher or Scream. Like, if you have Michelle Williams, she's doing her best, she's having more fun, or maybe she cares less. In any case, she's more free in this movie, I think, than the last one. She's, like, clearly, like, playing it off a little bit better. And I'm like, all right, good for you. But, make her scream. And then Venom has to fight Anne. You know, like, and then at least then I care about what happens at the end of the fight.
That I think Anne's my only real big sticking point. Like, I get how they wrapped her and made her a plot point in this book, in this comic, but Anne's, other than a mention, never really been a thing in the Venom books. It's like Anne was a thing. Well, she's She-Venom, but what I'm saying is, like, I feel like Sony so hard wants to make Eddie have the love interest.
It's just that's just Hollywood. That is just I'm making a superhero picture, and in the superhero picture, we have to have at least one, maybe two, if we can get away with it, villains and a girl.
And that's what I mean, like, I've been into Venom since like pretty much Lethal Protector era.
Yeah.
You know, like, I was too young to get into Venom when he got created, but Lethal Protector era. And Anne's there, she's a part of it, but she's never been a big thing in like the overarching lore of Venom. It's just, she's always been the X, and she became She-Venom, which we got a fun little cameo of.
Yep, and then she died.
Yeah. But I can also tell it's funny because even the She-Venom cameo they did, they barely spent time animating it because you get like a millisecond of like a face, and then just she's running through the dark. Like, I was like, wow, they just didn't want to put money into that one.
No, but they also want to they want to say there's like 100% more Venom in this movie than the last one, which like, yeah, they delivered on that. So, okay, let's not talk about this plot anymore because it's just...
I enjoyed it. At the end of the day, you're right. Let's end the discussion, but let's end with our final thoughts.
I was going to say, let's talk about the CG and stuff, like, because it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, people are complaining about how Carnage looks, and I'm like, he looks like Carnage.
I think Carnage looks phenomenal in this movie.
They definitely amped up the CG. I mean, you could still... okay, here's my question to everyone bad-mouthing the CG. The CG looks good for what it is. It's an alien symbiote.
Right,
How is it supposed to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the original a day before I saw this one, and he doesn't look bad in the first one, but he looks way worse in the first. Like, especially in like that nightclub scene where he has all the glow sticks on him and stuff. He looks like a solid like dude.
Yeah,
and he looks really good. And Carnage, it just looks incredible. I think Carnage, just the way the CG was on Carnage, was probably my favorite thing in the movie, just because it's so like extra.
Oh yeah,
the scene of him bursting out and then screaming, it was real loud. I was like, whoa, this is kind of actually scary.
I've never been in a louder movie in my life.
Oh, the prison scene's amazing.
The first one is super loud too.
This one was the loudest movie I've ever been in.
Loud.
I was like, this is really loud.
Since we're talking about CG, my favorite scene, and it stands out to me, was Carnage on the stained glass window, spreading out and leaping in. That just looks so amazing. Like, I don't understand people bad mouthing it, because you can't go into Venom and be like, man, I hope they don't do much CG. You're not gonna practical effect Venom. I'm sorry, it's just not happening.
You can't. But like, and you don't need to. Like the CG, it's like Cars. You know, like. they've done them. Like, you don't know the difference between a real car and a CG car in a movie anymore. Like, they've nailed it. Oh, you got it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I thought you were talking about Pixar.
That's what I thought. I was
like, it's like Lightning McQueen.
I was like, do you think Lightning McQueen looks real?
He looks really good, and it looks as good as Carnage. No, it's that like they've nailed these things, and it's like, I think we could safely say that they've nailed symbiotes on screen.
Yeah, totally. And that's like the another thing about this, but going back to like there are moments in this movie that are so goofy and like campy that I just wanted the whole, like Carnage's first scene in that prison was the one time no one laughed in my theater. There were like 5 people in my theater and no one laughed.
There were like 30
laughed.
And nobody laughed.
Yeah, I laughed like really hard when he was killing everyone in that prison because it was so ridiculous.
Because it turns into a tornado.
I know.
Carnage has enough powers. We don't need to add a new power, which is that he can turn into the Tasmanian Devil with his own gravitational
That was great.
pull.
Okay, hold on. For the Tasmanian Devil tornado moment, I actually didn't find it bad at all. I actually thought, they're adding extra stuff to him, so it's not just blades. But then they never use it again. But then they did never use it again. It's not like in the fight with Eddie, he's like, oh, look at my new shit.
Yeah, no. I can't believe. Like, okay, so full disclosure, I saw the Carnage transformation scene on YouTube a few days before because they released it because Sony was so worried that people weren't going to go see it. And I laughed so hard at that scene because it's so stupid.
Oh, with the blood pushback and
No. When he turns into a tornado.
Yeah, because
Like-
that was the peak of the movie for me. I think just because it was early on, and I was like, oh, this is what this movie is.
Right, it's just really
like it's
dumb.
just stupid,
It's
and that's what I was
deliberately
in
stupid.
for.
Yeah,
and that like I had heard based on I hadn't seen the trailers, but I had heard based on people watching the trailers that it was going to be funnier, and obviously Andy Serkis was directing it, and I was like, okay, so this is going to be
silly or
stupid and
whimsical,
goofy.
Yeah.
And it's like almost there, and it reaches that point throughout the movie, but never stays there for the like consistently for the whole time.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the shame of it to me.
That's my major gripe is like it's very stupid, and then anything that isn't like stupid / popcorn fun is nothing. Like it's just bland. And so there's a lot of this movie where you're just like, I get it, or move on, but it's only 90 minutes.
88 actually, which is my
Holy
complaint.
crap.
It's only
That's
88
another thing
minutes
that I
long.
really like.
It felt long.
It felt short to me.
It felt
but
short to me,
Yeah,
yeah.
I enjoyed it so much. I got to the end and I'm like, we could have put so much more into
It
this.
felt
To
like
be
2
fair,
hours.
Sal, I feel like you went in not wanting to see it at all.
Based on his messages before this, he did not want to go see this
No
movie at all.
no one I knew wanted to see it. So like
We were planning this for Absolutely Marvel NDC, the channel in which we do our normal reviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the discussion was who's going to go see Venom within the next 4 days because of the COVID situation where you might not be able to see it.
Right.
And you were the only one that was like, I'll try. I'll
Yeah.
try. I'm like,
Well,
I'm
it's
like,
not
he
one of
doesn't
my-
want to see it. That's why
it's
we were
not one
going
of
to
my
film
favorite
it.
movies, but like don't be like the commenters who think that I deliberately hate things or look for a reason
Yeah,
to
no.
hate it. Like it is not a very good movie. And I'm not going to pretend like I had a great time watching it.
Oh, totally. I think it's
No,
pacing.
I mean, that's why we have
and-
3 opinions here. We have
The
the
pacing
meh,
is
the
awful.
good, and then
the tone is like all over the place.
Right.
And like even a Venom 2 movie that is goofy and over the top. The problem is you can't make a goofy over the top Venom movie because then you piss off people who genuinely like Venom movies.
Right.
Yeah.
Because people who genuinely like Venom movies want to be legitimized in their fandom and see Venom be cool, not a joke.
I liked this. It was
Well, it's-
awesome.
It's interesting because like so I just feel like Sony doesn't want to put faith in change because Venom, like you said, made a bunch of money and like you have so many examples in other superhero movies. Like Thor: The Dark World was like bad and Marvel knew they needed to change something, so Thor Ragnarok comes around and it's like, oh, we're going to show the other side of Thor that is a thing in the comics, that he's stupid and goofy, and we're going to make that into a thing.
Yeah.
And everyone loves that movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And same thing, like I mentioned earlier, with James Gunn's Suicide Squad and Guardians to an extent.
Sure.
Where it's, those are directors. Those movies changed tone because of their directors, because of Taika Waititi, because of James Gunn.
Yeah.
And then you put Andy Serkis on this, and you're like, go wild for 3 scenes.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it has to be normal. And that's why I think this movie feels so strange, because it's like tonal whiplash the whole time.
And it isn't normal. Like, the characters don't behave normally. Like, Anne's fiance is a goofball who is supposed to be the one who's like, this is all crazy. But he's like derp. Like he's just along for the ride. Like he's not in any genuine danger, but like he could, like, this movie could be very callous about death and murder and just for a laugh kill Dan, but they don't. And everyone in this movie is a cartoon amped up version of themselves. Like Ravencroft outside looks like a mental facility from the 50s. Then you go inside and it's like the inside of a submarine. And it's like, like, why is this thing so bizarre? And it's like, because it's a goofy comic book movie, because it's Batman and Robin, and we're having fun. You're not seeing this for real, like for to see a real movie, right? Like we're having a goofy good time. But like, then we go to the police. This movie felt like Malignant. That's what this movie felt like.
Oh,
Did you
no
guys see
compare to
Malignant?
that. Yeah, no, that was not a good
Haven't
movie
seen
at
it.
all.
It
I'll
felt like
give you that
Malignant.
where it does change. The tone does shift as bad as Malignant does. I'll say
Yes.
that.
Well, and also like this cracked mirror version of reality where like every room has 40-foot ceilings just because we want to have this atmospheric look. And like there's always red light coming in. Like it's one of those things where it's like when they didn't want, like it is almost as though the scenes that are super bland and boring are the scenes that like the director had no interest in directing.
Right.
And so he didn't do anything with them.
Because, Andy Serkis is he's Gollum.
He's a creative person.
A monkey. He does that stuff.
Right.
Like, that's what he wants to work on. He wants to work on Carnage turning into a tornado.
Yeah.
And killing a bunch of people in a prison. I don't think he's super interested in the love story of
nobody
Eddie
is.
Brock and Anne. Like, who cares?
Right, but no one's
the love story
interested,
of
so
Venom.
don't put it in the movie.
But the love story of Venom and Eddie, that's great.
Yeah, because that's silly. Like, making Carnage and Venom and, like, making this movie incredibly homoerotic is hilarious. And obviously he's interested in that, so he spends a lot of time on that.
You can tell, like, but what's weird about it, because, like, okay, because clearly that was, I remember everybody saying after Venom 1, they were like, it's the greatest love story ever written, and I said the same thing about TMNT 2, where it was like, Beaver Rocksteady are my favorite characters in this movie. But Venom and Eddie have the same relationship, but, like, in 2, they really ratchet up the fact that, like, I think they think the theme of this movie is abuse. And I'm like, you're not doing it right.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that, like, Venom and Eddie have a really toxic relationship. And it's played for laughs. And at the end, they learn they need each other. So, like, they're codependent and toxic, and then they find out that they're stronger for being together. It's like that scene in Rick and Morty when, like, Beth and Jerry work together to kill their worst impulses, and it's like, no, that's not the lesson.
No.
And I don't know. I'm just like, it's the movie's not really about anything, but it wants to be, and, like, good for them. And if you derive meaning from it, like, all right, I'm glad.
Thank you.
And
thank you for legitimizing my opinion on this movie that I enjoyed it. And I
like
enjoyed
anyone in the comments, like, they don't agree with me and they, like, think that I'm a hater. And it's like, okay, but, like, at least the fight was cool. But even then, at the end, it doesn't make any sense because, like, Anne and Dan shouldn't be where they are when the Venom symbiote falls, and, like, clearly Shriek was supposed to kill Carnage at the end, but, like, either while they were making it or after the fact, they were like, no, Venom has to kill Carnage. So, like, they made Venom just push Shriek out of the way so she doesn't kill Carnage.
That
so
was
that
the
Venom
weird
could kill
moment
Carnage.
It's
I felt
like
like that
Shriek
was one of those
gets up,
things.
and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be Shriek blasting Carnage off of Cletus.
Yeah.
Cletus will probably fall, and then Venom's like, bat.
Yeah. And, like, and that could have been a joke. Like, that could have been funny if it's like, no, this is my movie. If it was, like, a really fourth wall breaking moment where he's like, this movie's not called Shriek. I'm not expecting that kind of line, but, something like that. But it was just kind of like, he just does it for no reason. And I don't know. There's a lot of, like, weird topsy-turviness about this movie that, like, makes it really complicated to think about. Like I feel, I really thought I was able to, like, articulate my thoughts about what I feel about this movie, but, like, the movie itself is just so weird and all over the place. I can't even acclimate myself.
Same.
And I get the vibe, I really do. But I really did enjoy the movie overall. Like, I'm not just doing this to be the antithesis to you hating on the movie or Dylan finding joy in the moments of the movie. Like, I really did enjoy this movie from the get-go. My biggest, like, I don't even have big complaints about it. But bear in mind, I'm also the kind of viewer who likes that popcorn kind of flick. Like, just seeing Venom and Eddie fighting and then breaking down the motorcycle, Venom flipping him off, going to the gay club, and then going off to the we do need to be together, fighting. I enjoyed everything. I wanted more. I wanted more Carnage being Carnage. I wanted more of Eddie and Cletus's discussions and what happened between them. I got enough Anne. I wanted more of everything else.
You didn't need her. Like, if you just want, because there is no B plot to this movie. So it's like, if you want to just see, like, you could have just had, I was really worried about this and they don't have it, but instead of not having that, they just have nothing. Like, you could have just had more Cletus and Eddie, or more Cletus and Shriek, or more inexpensive things. Because, like, here's the thing. You can't make an 88-minute long movie where it's just Venom and Carnage on the screen fighting in 3 different acts, each one ratcheting up to the final climax. Like,
why
it's just
not?
Because it's too expensive. It's too expensive. Like that, and that's the problem. It's like, but that's what people want. Like, that's the movie they should have made. It's like, you should have made a $400 million movie where it's just Venom and Carnage fighting for 75 minutes.
I think
I probably would have liked that more.
Right.
For me, if they cleaned this up and, honestly, ideally, they cut all ties to the first movie. Not because I think the first movie is the worst thing in the world, but it's just like, you know, this movie's being made post their clearly renewed deal with Disney. So you can put it in a new direction and just kind of soft reboot without saying it's a soft reboot and just
like
remove...
Suicide Squad.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like very similar, but nothing contradictory. You can connect them if you want, but it doesn't matter. And it's just like, this is the status quo that, you know, Venom and Eddie are together.
Right.
And they're having issues, and then Carnage shows up. Like, that's the movie. You don't need to throw in any of that other stuff that ties it back, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't add anything.
The weirdest thing is, like, the post-credit scene, which undoes everything, because if you're going to leave, why didn't you go for broke? Like...
Right. Yeah.
Like,
that's
why
why
kill
my
Carnage?
theory,
like,
my theory is that post-credit scene was put in after they had already...
way after.
Yeah, that was not...
100%.
They wouldn't have set up Toxin if they were going to leave.
Exactly, and that's just it. They set up a follow-on villain. They also closed out the Carnage thing. They could bring him back. They did it in the comics, but they closed it out as far as the movie's concerned. They set up Toxin, and then out of the blue, we're on the beach, and we bring up... That's why the post-credit scene is my biggest complaint, because, like, now Venom's like, oh, I can give you information from the universe. Wait, what?
And in that moment, I was like, oh man, they're gonna do Null. How freaking crazy!
Yeah, I would.
They're doing it.
That'd be great.
But like the fact that they brought that up and it wasn't brought up at all before this, not when the Carnage father moment, none of that. I did like that joke.
It's a red one. Like,
I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill
that
you,
too.
father.
I was like, is that a thing in the comics?
No,
it's like, oh no, red ones are
worse?
really bad. Like, no.
What?
I did like the joke of I'm gonna kill you, father, and then the actor's like, and he's like, no, not you, father. You, father.
Okay.
And that actor that was the father, he's the guy that made Inside Number 9, which is a great show, by the way.
Wait, really?
Yeah. But that was the post-credit scene. I loved it, and we have a full discussion about theories and ideas and all these things where that's going.
Yes.
You can find that over at Absolutely Marvel and DC, so we're only going to touch on it briefly here because that's a 20-minute video in itself.
Totally.
But it felt so out of place because, like, they're at a beach, which I don't think was mentioned once. Then they're talking about the knowledge that Venom has, which hasn't been brought up at all. Then they warp over to this other area to get the J. Jonah Jameson and the Spider-Man moment.
Yep.
None of that was set up at all. And I get they wanted to surprise you with the multiverse jump, but it definitely felt like they would, like, cut out the Toxin scene, because I don't think we're ever coming back to that.
I hope not. I really didn't like the actor who played him.
Yeah. That seemed like him having like importance, and then especially because I didn't know who Patrick Mulligan was while watching it, but I looked it up after and I was like, oh, that's weird that they like seemed like they're hedging a lot of bets on this guy. He just seemed like the random cop who out of convenience had ties to Shriek.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. It's like, and again, that's like, it seems like they want to have themes, like with him having like trauma and being triggered when he learns that Shriek might be alive is like, that's like an interesting idea that's just executed really poorly, because it's shown once through like a foggy window and then never looked at again.
Also, his hairpiece is also executed very poorly.
I didn't notice that.
I was just like, that's just not really your hair.
Sally, are you sure you weren't going in looking for things to complain about? I'm just... I'm one of your commenters now, but...
literally that. Like,
I think in the first... I'll be honest, the first 10 minutes of the movie was me being like, okay, give this movie a chance.
Okay, so I went into the movie with my wife, who loved the first one with me, and we both were just excited when the movie started. Like, oh, it's going to be great, here we go. So, I mean, I guess we did get 3 great opinions here. Overall... the problem is, and this is the biggest issue, because I know people are probably going to comment like, oh, there was a lot of just the two of them kind of pointing out problems. When you enjoy a movie, just like you enjoy a video, you have far less to say. That's why you don't see the positive comments or the positive reviews, because you just enjoyed it for what it was. I enjoyed the CGI. I enjoyed the plot points. I loved the Eddie and Venom back and forth. Much as I felt Anne was unneeded, she was funny. I enjoyed her discussing things with Venom and Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Chen was great. When Venom took over her eyes and was snapping at her, that was great. I loved that. Dan, I thought was a throwaway character, only to have him throwing the gas down. It's like, oh, he's a joke, and now he's helping. I really did enjoy this movie, legitimately. Just like I enjoy my cherry Carnage drink. That's a sponsor.
Just invalidating your whole point. Just like I love my sponsorship from Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. No, I'm kidding.
No, but seriously though, I really did enjoy it, and I find it interesting because Dylan, it's like you have scenes you enjoyed, and then Sal, you just did not like the movie, and it's funny because. Well, you're right.
But that doesn't matter. The comments will just say the same thing anyway. The comments hate me, and I don't care.
I think Sal and I have a similar opinion where we're so confused by the movie that we don't know what to think about it.
I'm trying to not put words in your mouth, Sal. I
appreciate it. But the comments will do that anyway. It's fine.
But what I feel like, and what I was getting my point here is, I feel like we're the internet's reaction to Venom 2.
Yeah. Because it's got like a 75% freshness rating from users and like a 30% freshness rating from reviewers.
That's what I mean. I think literally there's the people who are in love with it. When I tweeted out that I thought this movie was great and I enjoyed it and I really did, and I thought it was I never thought I'd see the first commenter I got, the first response was, I wouldn't have called it good. I mean, that was a pretty terrible movie. And I just responded with, well, it's a good thing I don't have your opinion, and I'm allowed to say what I want.
Yeah, exactly.
The movie is, in the end of the day, it's divisive with the audience. And it's a toss-up because it's the Sony intervention, the people not wanting a Venom movie to exist, the people wanting a Venom movie to exist, the people wanting Venom to just exist in the Spider-Man universe. The people who just didn't want it. It's all over the place, and I feel like that's the state of this movie. You can't go into this movie with any predisposed ideas about what you're going to get into because it doesn't feel like the first movie. It doesn't feel like an MCU movie. It's its own thing.
Right.
Love it or hate it. It reminds me of the backlash to Batman v Superman, where it's like you can love it, you can hate it.
Yeah.
But there is an audience on both sides of that fence. It's not like when Fan Four Stick came out and we were all over here on the hate side.
Oh, right. This is just a disaster.
I don't know. I've heard some people like that movie.
They like it. It's like
I like the first half.
The longer you get away from it, the more people go actually, I really liked it.
Yeah, but I just using that as an example because almost the majority disliked it when it came out. Regardless.
Yeah. No, it's true.
And that's what I find interesting about this Venom situation. And it's funny because regardless of the opinions on this movie, the most talked about thing in this movie is the 30 seconds at the ending where Tom Holland shows up.
Right.
Which is I think that's also indicative of the whole movie is by the end of it, because again, the audience in my theater was completely dead the whole time. And even that, I think by the time that the mid-credit scene rolled around with the Spider-Man stuff, I think it was just me and one other dude because everyone left because they've never seen a movie before, I guess. But everyone else had left, and that dude just got up and said nothing, and I think I audibly went, "Huh?"
Yeah.
But I was the one guy who was like, "What's going on with this?" But that and the prison scene were the two times where I was fully in.
Right.
And other than that, it's just strange, just weird time.
It's a really weird movie.
But overall, last thing, if you had to recommend it to somebody who wants to see a nice superhero movie right now with, there not being much else in the theaters going, would you recommend it?
I would wait until it's on streaming.
Yeah, that's what I did with the original Venom. I never saw it in theaters.
Yeah, same.
I saw it on streaming.
Same.
Right. The difference is now we run this channel, Absolutely Marvel and DC, where we try to review these things kind of a lot faster than we used to. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but here on Comicstorian, we don't normally review movies. And Sally, you don't typically review them either, so we've never rushed to the theater to see these things.
Right. I would, if you loved Venom 1, I would definitely recommend it. If you loved it, I'd be yeah, go see it. Are you kidding me? But I would also say, if you're I didn't like Venom, but I'm curious about your opinions. I'm curious about why it's so confusing. I'd definitely wait until streaming. But watch it. I think you should see it.
Yeah, I think the ideal viewing experience for this movie is on streaming, get a couple of your friends, just turn it on in the background and pay attention slightly. And then it's cool. That's how you should watch this
You might
movie.
be wow, I really liked Venom too. I bet that'll actually have a better impact.
But anyway, guys, we are the Absolutely Marvel and DC team over here. Obviously, you're watching this either on Comicstorian or Absolutely Marvel and DC. And if you're watching this on Absolutely Marvel and DC, then we chose to not put it up on Comicstorian. So all of that intro made no sense to you at all. But either way, we typically
I'm sure I made like a note.
Yeah, a note somewhere. But we typically do review movies, TV shows that are in the superhero world. We do look at other stuff going on within the world of Netflix or just shows that we enjoy. It's pretty much our discussion channel where we talk about everything happening. We talk about theories, we talk about the reviews, we talk about the shows, and because everyone has always asked me to cover them, so me and Sal decided to make this little fun channel on the side, brought in Dylan and Dan, the producer from Comics Experiment, and we just do this stuff on the side. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love for you to come and join us on that channel. Don't forget to go check out our sponsor for the episode, G Fuel. Use code comics at checkout. Get yourself a black ooze or red ooze. I'm trying to turn these for the camera. More Carnage on me. More black ooze or red ooze.
Let there be Carnage.
Yeah, let there be Carnage. I recommend red ooze. It's got a cherry kind of flavor to it. I enjoyed it a lot. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Check out the movie. Let us know your opinions down below. This is a very long episode, no matter where this goes, but that always happens with these reviews. And if you did enjoy Sal's opinion, go check him out over at Comic Pop or Comic Pop Returns. And Dylan, you can find him at Absolutely Marvel and DC or Orum's Corner.
Eventually, I'll upload.
I'll see you guys next time right here. Thank you so much.